Hello, my name's John. This is my new channel, Must Read More. I've never done anything like this, so cut me some slack. I'm new. I don't know what to do. Uh, I thought that I'd start off by doing a book haul um, because I thought that it might give you a chance to see what I like to read, what I like to pick up, what I get. So I guess we'll just go through them in kind of the order roughly of where I picked them up. Okay, I got them from three different places all across town. So start with this is George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier, and I've read a couple of books by Orwell. I've read Down and Out in Paris and London, and I've read 1984. I think that's it. And I never found this book for $1, but I did today. So hopefully, hopefully it'll be interesting. It's one of those. Orwell goes through kind of the English poverty, kind of akin to Down and Out in Paris and London. I don't know if he lived the poverty in this one like he did in uh, Down and Out, but th I know there is no Wigan Pier, right? There, I heard that somewhere. There's no Wigan Pier. I don't know. And then let's see what's next. This is Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto. That's an interesting word, Otranto. Otranto? I don't know. Let's see, published pseudonymously in 1764. Pseudonymously? Yeah, pseudonymously. Cut me some slack, I'm new. So that's a Gothic, and I'm not the biggest fan of Gothic literature. I'm not the biggest fan of romances. I don't exactly know what this is about. I have a couple other kind of Gothic from this period, this sort of time period. I have some uh, Charles Brockton Brown, and I have up there somewhere is The Mysteries of Udolpho, but it's not really my favorite subject. But this one's short, it's very short. It's only 100 and something pages long, 110, 111. So I'll give that a shot sometime. And I have Václav Havel's Summer Meditations. He was, he's not alive anymore, but he was the president of the Czech Republic after the fall of Czechoslovakia. And I have a couple of books about it. I have a book about him and a book that he wrote, but I've never read them. I just haven't got around to it. But I picked them up because these aren't. I don't see these every day, and I really. He's an interesting figure. If I remember right, he made uh, plays. Was he a playwright? I think. I don't know how he wound up the president of Czech Republic, but I want to find that out. And then we have the autobiography of an American novelist by Thomas Wolfe. It's two separate things that Wolfe wrote in his life that have been brought together in this collection by Leslie Field, apparently. I don't know anything about Wolfe other than that he wrote Look Homeward Angel and that he died young. I remember, I believe it's a Ray Bradbury story where in the future they bring Thomas Wolfe back to life so he can write more stories. I don't know if that's Ray Bradbury, but I'm looking forward to this one because it's apparently, let's see, the first part is the story of a novel published in 1936, a candid telling of how Wolfe became a writer, how he wrote and published his first novel, Look Homeward Angel, and how the burden of fear and of public expectations nearly drove him mad. Okay. And then Writing and Living, the second part, not published until 1964, is a testament to Woolf's newly awakened social conscience. So, okay, that sounds pretty interesting. And again, it's not very long. It's 149 pages long. Somebody left a napkin in there for me. Oh, no. No, it's a napkin. I thought it was toilet paper. It's a napkin. And then we got the Art of the Mystery Story, edited by Howard Haycraft, and that's pretty neat. I'm looking forward to this. This is all a bunch of essays about mystery novels and by some pretty big names in the mystery field. Dorothy Sayers, for one, Rex Stout, Ogden Nash, let's see, Ellery Queen, Edmund Wilson, Dashiell Hammett, the G.K. Chesterton, Vincent Starrett, Earl Stanley Gardner, Raymond Chandler, John Dixon Carr. So that's really interesting. It has S.S. Van Dyne's uh, famous 20 rules for writing detective stories. So I was really happy to find this today. That may be the find of the day for me, and I'll probably start this one today. We have this fun-looking thing, "Killers of the Seas" by Edward R. Ricciuti. Ricciuti? I'm not sure. It's got a big shark there on the cover, but it's not just about sharks. It's let's see. It's also about uh, river creatures, river fish and snakes, things like that, turtles. See, the kangaroo. If you know what the kangaroo is, you know what the kangaroo is. The Arctic jellyfish, the Wells catfish, the blue ringed octopus, the great white shark, the giant squid, and on and on. So, and it's got pictures. They're all black and white. I don't mind that at all. That doesn't bother me one bit, except, well, that's a piranha there. Except that sometimes it can be hard to make out uh, black and white. The contrast isn't always the best. So, but I usually don't buy books like this, but I picked this one up because it really looks geared towards somebody with a casual interest, as opposed to some of the other ones I have about sea creatures. They're very in depth. They're too much. They're over my head for sure. Let me get that William Buckley lean going on, I guess. Uh, so that's cool. And none of these were more than $3. Most of them were a dollar. This one was a dollar. It's from, I believe, 1974. So 1973. So it's out of date. I don't care. We have this one, Norman Mailer's Some Honorable Men, Political Conventions, 1960 to 1972. It's a collection of Norman Mailer's political writing. And there's Norman Mailer. And I've never read a Norman Mailer book. I've had The Executioner's Song on my shelf for probably 10 years. The big hardcover first edition with I believe it's the first edition with the really nice cover of the evening sky, the telephone poles with the wires. I've never read it. It has an even bigger picture of Norman Mailer on the back, just like this. But I also have Of a Fire on the Moon. I've never read that one, but I bought this because it's my intention to read um, a lot about the 60s and 70s, basically from, I would say, Eisenhower's second term up until probably 1980, the end of the Carter administration. but particularly the 60s and to Gerald Ford. So I buy these like this. I know most people aren't going to sit and read this. I intend to someday. I have a bunch of 60s books published about that era, about Nixon, LBJ. Uh, so that's my project, is to do kind of a deep dive on that era of American history. But I'll go more into that later, maybe, if we ever get there. So that's that's neat. And this is the last one I picked up at that particular store. Uh, the book, The Book of Legendary Lands by Umberto Eco. I, I, for some reason, I got Umberto Eco mixed up with Italo Calvino. I don't. I've never read anything by Italo Calvino, but I've meant to read anyway. The I've meant to read his collection of, I can't remember, ah, something about a city. So Eco wrote In the Name of the Rose. I read In the Name of the Rose, and I really liked it. I really did. But there were really long chunks of it in Latin. I don't read Latin. I read a little tiny bit of Latin. Not enough to be useful. I read like the quotations Latin, the little booklet, And but this is not a novel. I don't believe this is something else. This is very illustrated. It's let's see. It's basically just him going through. See, that's pretty neat. These kinds of, I guess they're myths and mythic places. Yes, utopias and dystopias where our imagination can confront things that are too incredible or challenging for our limited real world. So there's a lot of pictures, and it was only $3. So that's really neat. That reminds me of some of the paintings on the ceiling at Versailles, the Palace of Versailles. Uh, I've seen those in person, but this is not. This is something else. This is in Madrid. This is Francisco Bayu Isubius. I'm not sure. You'll have to forgive me. My pronunciation is probably pretty terrible. So that's really interesting. It's really heavy. That's all that I got from that particular store. And I went to a different store and I picked up a few more things. Uh, this one's let me see, Star Wars: The New Jedi Order, Rebel Dream by Aaron Alston, and this is kind of interesting. I've been reading a few Star Wars books lately. I've read uh, a few months ago. I read a book that did not have Star Wars anywhere on the cover, anywhere at all. It wasn't mentioned at all. It was Lando Calrissian and the Star Caves of Thon Boca, which is Lando Calrissian is out in the galaxy somewhere, and he runs into this giant manta ray creature that that goes through. They live. They're the giant manta ray creatures, and they live in a nebula. I think it was. It was and they're filter feeders. But excuse me, there are there is this anyway, this evil mage kind of character who's coming to cause trouble, and Lando has to save the day, and it wasn't particularly good. And then it wasn't bad, it wasn't good, which is why I think that Star Wars dissociated itself from that particular novel. And then there was Han Solo at Star's End, which was it was okay, but this one is about an interesting chapter in the Star Wars universe. This is later on. This is after the original movies. This is during a period of time, and I know it varies very a little bit, but there's this kind of warlike species that comes in from outside of the galaxy, and the Yuzan Vong. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. And they're worse than the Empire. They're very bad, and they come into the galaxy and start causing trouble. And that's takes place. This book takes place in that era, so I'm pretty excited about that. I haven't read many Star Wars books. I've heard a lot of them aren't very good, but that's okay. So we'll give this one a shot. It was $1. It's not the end of the world. And we have Aliens Genocide by David Bischoff. Bischoff. So I've read quite a few Aliens books at this point, and some of them are pretty good. They get a little similar. They're similar to each other as you might expect, but they're pretty good. These are Dark Horse books, and the dogs are going nuts, chasing the cat. So anyway, this one might be pretty good. Maybe a Garbogus read there. Next is I was really surprised to find this one. This is Chalky by John Wyndham. Not my favorite cover in the world, but I was really surprised to see this book. I've never seen it in person, so I picked it up. And it's about a kid has an imaginary friend, but he's not imaginary. Is he an alien? I'm not really sure. I read his book, John Wyndham's book, The Day of the Triffids, which I didn't really care for. It wasn't awful. It's just you expect more out of the Triffids than you get, you know. So that's pretty neat. And I got these two, and I'll just show both of them at once. This is a couple of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, and I haven't really read a lot of Asimov. I've read his short fiction a little, uh, but anyway, they were $1, and why not? They were right next to Chalky, so I picked them up. And this Oxford Classics version of Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Uh, I'm not really into this kind of thing, these kind of old English romances. I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight not too long ago. It was okay. I might read Beowulf soon, but that's old English. But Chaucer, I've never read Chaucer. I have a biography of Chaucer, which I also haven't read. I've read more books than I'm letting on, but I haven't read this one. There I go. Uh, anyway, I'm new. Forgive me. So I don't know when I'll get to that. It'll probably be a long time. It's kind of an interesting cover. What's that? Troilus and Cressida from the Roman de Troyes, a French prose translation of Boccaccio's Philostrato, circa 1480. That's neat. Let's see. Next is a book I used to have. I don't have anymore. I have today Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. I used to have a really nice first edition hardcover of In Cold Blood that I bought at a flea market, and I I gave that to my aunt. I never read the book. I tried to, but when I tried to read it, I was too young, I guess, to really read it or to get interested in it. I might now. I've seen the movie, the the Capote with Philip Seymour Hoffman a couple times. I really like that. I've seen several interviews with Capote himself, And so one day I hope to read this in cold blood. It's pretty much de rigueur, right? For crime fiction. Capote pretty well started true crime, I guess, with this book. But I don't know a lot about true crime. It's not really my cup of tea. So, yeah. And then went to a different store, picked up a few things there. This is uh, John Howard Griffin's Black Like Me, which in 1959 or 1960 he took he wanted to go down south and see what the segregation was like, what it was like to be black in the awful time of segregation. And he took some kind of medicine. I'm not sure what it was, but it turned he was a white guy, and it turned his skin black. So when he went down south, all the white people thought he was black, and I don't know if that's politically correct anymore, probably not. But he saw firsthand the way that black people were treated in the South, and it was really bad, uh, as you might expect. Of course, it was. Um, John Howard Griffin is an interesting guy because he not only did he do this, but uh, he he was sent to Italy in World War II, and he went blind, and he was blind for many years. He taught himself to walk through fields and things just by himself, just alone. He would just go out and walk. I watched there's a documentary about him that comes on KET, the local PBS station sometimes, and it's really good. So I've been wanting to find this for a while. This is the first time I've ever found a copy that wasn't expensive. This one was only $2. It was on clearance. So, like I said, it's probably not politically correct these days or whatever, but I tend to judge books by the time that they were published and not by the current time, which is the way I think most books ought to be judged. So, I try not to. But anyway, let's, we'll leave that discussion for another day also. And we have this book, which I've never seen in person until today, but I've seen the other one. There's anyway, Borderlands 2. This is Borderlands, the first Borderlands. Kind of an interesting cover there. It's hard to see. It's hard to see even in the light, but it's one of those kind of 90s weird covers. It kind of reminds me of the movie House on Haunted Hill from 1999. That the opening sequence with the uh, there's like needles and spools and things. It reminds me of that. That was kind of the style in the 90s. And this has, let's see, it's edited by Thomas F. Monteleone. You know, I'm not sure if Borderlands 2 is the same as this series, come to think of it. Let's see. No, this is Borderlands 2. I'm confused now. Maybe this isn't the series that I think it is. Oh well, I'll have to read it and find out. There's a bunch of it's a collection of short stories, or it's an anthology. So there's F. Paul Wilson, Joe Lansdale's Love Doll of Fable, Bentley Little, Rex Miller. I know that name, Rex Miller. Charles L. Grant. So I'm sure there's a lot more people in here. I'm not very good with names and things like that right off the top of my head. But I want to know if this is the same series as the other book that I read, the Borderlands 2. I don't know if it is. I'll have to find out. Let's see. And we have uh, Brian Smith's House of Blood. This is a leisure books uh, book, a leisure book, leisure horror. Sometimes I look for this little mark here because I remember these books like this were always in grocery stores and bookstores when I was growing up. And I guess leisure books went out of business. I don't ever see them anymore. That doesn't mean they're out of business. I don't ever see them. I know that. So this one is about some friends who go out on vacation, and I guess they get lost driving back to wherever they're from, and they find the House of Blood. It's of course it's a gateway to hell. So we'll we'll just have to see what that's. That may be a Garbogus read there. We'll find out. So yeah, we have the Agatha Christie's The Pale Horse. This was only $1 something too. Uh, I like Agatha Christie, I really do, but I have problems with Agatha Christie. I don't think, I really hate that British class system. I really hate the idea that in a lot of British fiction from Christie's time, 20s, 30s, 40s, there is this kind of a concept of servant class and working class people being stupid and drunk and foolish and barely deserving of pay or even of polite treatment. They're kind of considered animals almost by pack animals by the ruling classes, by the upper classes, the middle class, the royal class. I don't know about, but anyway, the British class system is not something I'm a fan of, and Agatha Christie was. She was part of it. And that kind of taints some of her books in a way. I'm not really, it just bothers me because they don't, in Agatha Christie books, you don't, a lot of times the working class, they're not, they're not treated as individuals. They're not treated with, they're not given a kind of depth of humanity. I was thinking this on the way home, uh, that something kind of interesting about like Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle is that he he humanized his characters. From princes on down to servants and that kind of people. Conan Doyle really humanized the people in his stories, whereas Agatha Christie, she tended to look down on people, and that makes some of her books a little bit bothersome to me. But I still read them. I still love them. She was very good at evoking a kind of time and place. She was very British, I guess we could say, and it bleeds through to her characters. This is not a Hercule Poirot novel or a Miss Marple. This is someone, Mark Easterbrook. I don't know if he's one of her detectives or not, but so this one's about witches, maybe, in a sunlit English hamlet. Does the sun ever come out in England? I don't know. In this place it does. So anyway, then we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Holmes by John H. Watson, M.D., as edited by Lauren D. Esselman. Esselman? Not sure. So I recently read his, uh, it was Dracula versus Holmes, or was it Holmes versus Dracula? And it was okay. It wasn't spectacular, but it was okay. It was pretty, but that's another video, really. I kind of felt like Dracula was too humanized in that book. I'm kind of interested to see what he does with Dr. Jekyll, because Dr. Jekyll is, despite being a creation, a chemical reaction, uh, Dr. Jekyll is a human character. Uh, I wonder why it's Dr. Jekyll versus Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Holmes and not Mr. Hyde or Dr. Hyde and Mr. Holmes. Or, good Lord, I can't talk. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Holmes. I wonder why it's not Mr. Hyde and Mr. Holmes. So, anyway, that might be good. Might be not good. We'll find out. Uh, and then I chanced upon this when I just saw it. It was $2. The year's best horror stories 20, edited by Carl Edward Wagner, which is not a name you see very often. Um, his story Sticks is the one that stands out in my mind because it's been anthologized a number of times. I don't particularly think it's all that good. It's a little, but anyway, this is let's see who else in this one. Let's see, Ramsey Campbell, Dennis Etchison, Brian Lumley. I like Brian Lumley. Short stories. I don't care much for his novels. Let's see. I don't recognize any of these other names. Sheila Hodgson, D.F. Lewis, Elizabeth Hand. Sometimes these collections like this are really hit or miss. I have quite a few of them. I've been collecting them for years. So we'll just have to read it and find out, I guess. I got 3 more here. So this is The Devil's Dictionary by Ambrose Bierce, a real cynical pessimist who vanished in Mexico sometime after the Civil War. I've never read this. This is just his. He took a regular dictionary and he just assigned his own definitions to words. So, grape shot, noun, an argument which the future is preparing in answer to the demands of American socialism. So, I bet that'll be pretty interesting. So, I like these Dover Thrift editions too. Some of them aren't very good because they have really old translations. Not that being old makes them bad in the slightest, but they kind of they have to get what they can publish cheaply, and what they can publish cheaply is not always good. But I really like the look of this one. Can you see the devil there? Kind of like a wallpaper almost. So that's neat. I might read this first of all because you can just dip into it. It's not long at all. It's short. And so that'll be interesting. And then we have McLuhan for beginners. That's Marshall McLuhan, I think. I think that's how his name is pronounced. Which I don't really um, know a lot about McLuhan. I know his famous "The medium is the message." So uh, I'm much more familiar with Dr. Neil Postman's "Amusing Ourselves to Death," which is really a great book. I wish more people would read it. It's out of date, but the message is very the message is very important, which is we have to be careful of the media we consume. And McLuhan, on the other hand, is a little bit more pessimistic than Dr. Postman, I believe. So I've never found one of McLuhan's books, and this was a couple of dollars on the clearance rack, so I picked it up. And I'll probably also read this one soon because this is these 4 beginners books are kind of like graphic novels almost, and they're really for beginners. They're not always the most depth. They don't always have the most depth or detail, and they're sometimes, depending on who wrote them, they're not always totally, I don't want to say correct, but they can be kind of wishy-washy about content. So I don't know about this one. This one might be really good. But yeah, so there's that. And then this is the last one I found, and the last one I'm going to show. This is uh, The Rack by A.E. Ellis. I was just walking by and I saw the spine there, The Rack, and I thought, well, what's that? It was only $1 or so, so I picked it up, and it's about uh, patients in a TB hospital. About it was written in the 50s apparently. I don't know much about it. I don't know anything about it. So let's see. Yeah, the enclosed neurotic world of the TB sanatorium with its bad food, sardonic doctors, painful treatments, unassuaged longings, and flickering hopes. So that's probably pretty sad, I would imagine. TB is pretty sad, especially back in the day when they couldn't treat it. TB is a very, very unpleasant illness. It attacks the lungs, and so I'm not really usually into books like this, but it was $1, and I thought every now and then I like to get something that's different because sometimes I just crave something different to what I usually read, and this is different. Uh, Probably also pretty sad, but anyway. So that's my book haul today. And I hope you'll forgive me for not being very good at this and being completely new to this. I've never really done anything on camera. I don't really know where to look. The lighting's probably awful. The sound's probably awful. But I'm really kind of looking forward to this opportunity to talk to other people about books. So I hope you'll give me a chance, and I hope things work out, and we'll see where it goes. So see you next time. Thank you.